So I'm going to start explaining this assignment. So this is essentially where you have to calculate the speed of light using this with you calculate speed of light using the formula. So you know the speed of light. You need to calculate given a time t what the dilated time is essentially in terms of doing it. What you are given is a file which has values 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000. You have to calculate the time dilation using this formula where time dilation is equal to the time into under root 1 minus v square, which is velocity square, divided by c square, which is speed of light square. In this case, the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. And the velocity in this case will be the velocity from the file. So the objective is first to read the file here. The second thing that you need to do is calculate these values. And the third thing would be calculate the percentage and write it out into a file. That said, I am going to start from the slides where the slides talk about essentially file reading and writing, and I'll start from that code. So that said, if you go look in topic 11, if you go down, there is intro to files. You talk about reading files and writing files. So there is an example which uses file input stream, OF stream and IF stream. So input file open basically tells you to be able to open a file, and output file open open file. IF stream is for reading the file, OF stream is for output of the file. There is an example that you actually is there. So what you can do is you can use code which is similar to write it out to the file, which I will show you. The next thing you need, so the first thing you need to do is initialize the header. The second thing you need to do is you need to create the OF stream object and IF stream object in the file. Third thing you need to do is open the file, both files basically, one file to read. This is to read and this is to write. Then the next step is basically you need to write code to write it. The next step after that is if you are outputting it, you want to format it and put it out into the file in the form of a table. The next step after that is closing the files. Now, in order to use a good example to start from this, I am actually using this example where it actually has an input file and output file. Also, it shows you how to read the file. It also shows you how to write the file. So we will actually modify this using this example, and the second one that we are actually going to be using is this example, which allows us to loop to the file and read any amount of numbers that are there in the file. That's it. We're going to use these two examples to come up with the answer. So how do we start? So I am actually going to take this example, put it into Replit, and then start from there. Here you see I have the example copied to actually show you. This example is from the slides. So what it does is it reads the files. In this case, in out text and out text. So I created a file velocity which has the velocity tag on it and all the values that you actually need in there. You can easily create the velocity by adding file on Replit, which actually creates a new file, or you can pull the file in if you want. So you can drop the file in here and it'll add the file to your project. Now, in order to read the file, I will change this to velocity.txt, which actually is the name of the file. Now, the next step is I am reading velocity. So I will make some changes and I'm going to call the file that I'm going to write called velocity output dot text. Now the next thing is I am only reading one value, which is essentially the velocity. So I'm going to say int velocity, which is the value that I'm reading, and I'm going to say in velocity when I'm actually reading it. Now the issue is that I I need to loop at this point because currently it is only reading one value. So what I need to do is I need to loop. So how would I loop? I will say while in file has a value essentially, which is basically while in file has a value. This is coming from the example, which is the second example. I can continue reading it. Now, that said, so what I need to do is I don't need the average in this, so I'm going to remove the average from this code. Also, if you look at this file, it doesn't have integers all over. It has velocity on top, which I actually don't need. So I'm going to ignore that. How do I ignore that? So I'm going to say string velocity, or I'm going to say label. So I'm going to call it label 1 essentially. So what I can do is I can say in file label 1 to ignore the label. So whatever it's read, it's in there. The next thing I need to do is I will take in file and I will read velocity. So in this case, the value velocity will be in there. And what I am going to do is I am going to use velocity with the formula, which essentially, if I look at it, the formula is basically, the formula is essentially the formula for calculating the time dilation. So what I've done is I've actually taken the code. I've added a couple of libraries on top, the manip and the cmath to do the math operations. I've changed the name of the files. I've cleaned it up a little bit where I have taken velocity, what I'm reading from the file. If I look at the file, I read the file and I have to ignore the first one. So I ignore the first value, which I read in my label. And then I go through in file and I look for velocity. If I find velocity, then I keep on going. If not, then I stop. So what I'm doing is I'm just outputting velocity just to make sure it kind of works. So, and I close the file at the bottom. So the first step is essentially import IO stream, basically F stream and I stream. Obviously name the files. Now I created a constant which is called speed of light, which is a value constant. I also created a couple of other things. I open the in file and the out file essentially, and I close the in file and the out file. That's the last step. Now I've been able to read the file. So if I do that, I'm able to read the file. So the next thing I need to do is do the math of actually using the formula and calculating it. So let's see how we actually do that. So what I do is I have the variable which is out velocity, which is a double. So what I do is I calculate that. How do I calculate that? I am calculating everything based to 10, and I do square root of 1 minus velocity square divided by speed of light square under root. I use that. Now I need to check and see if it is outputting it correctly. So I'm going to do for space and just try to check. So I say out velocity. Let's see if it actually works right. So it works the value it is. It's not formatted right, but it kind of works right. The next thing I need to do after that is to actually do percentage. So how do we do percentage? Percentage is essentially velocity divided by speed of light. So how do we calculate that? So we say velocity percentage is equal to velocity divided by speed of light into 100. So let's output percentage. Now if you see, I have used an integer for percentage because I do not want to approximate. Now that said, you're looking, these are not formatted properly. So if you look at these are not formatted properly. How do I fix that? The easiest thing to do to fix it is to use fixed. So what I do is I do set precision to be 3 because I need 3 decimal points, and I say fixed. That means any floating value that is in there will have a fixed number of post decimal points. So let's see if this actually ends up working. And that's before the loop, before I display anything. So if you look at all the values have 3 decimal points. Now, if you see, I have all values now, even the velocities also are having 3 decimal points. In order to fix it, I'm putting a tab so it looks neater. So I'm going to put a tab so it looks kind of neater. So, more gap. Now I need to fix this to remove the 3 zeros. So how do I do that? So what I can do is I can do a trick. What I can do is I can typecast the velocity. That way it removes the decimal point. So this is what I have right now. Now I need to format this to make it look nicer. So the first thing I want to do is to output the top, essentially, to make sure that the labels on top for each of the column are available. So how do we do that? The first thing we do is I'm going to use set width, and I'm going to use left and right. So what I do is I will say see out alignment left. I put the set width 10. I put velocity. I then again set width. Then I do right, essentially align right, and then I also align right for time dilation. So let's see what it looks like. There you go. Now these need to be aligned properly. Now you see it's aligned but not really well. So I'm going to actually do the same thing with the output at the bottom where I need to align everything. So I'm going to replace the C out by using set width. So what I say is I align left the first column. Essentially these guys are aligned to the left. Then I will align this to the right so I can actually put a percentage sign next to it. Then I align the out velocity to the right. So let's see what it looks like. There you go. So now it looks, so this is aligned to the right. So if you look at it, this is aligned to the right. The percentage symbol is there because of that. And this is also aligned to the right. So all of this lines. So the critical thing is what I've done is if I use fixed, then any floating point in there will have a precision of 3. So if you want to use something like that, assuming you have more than one values that you want or more than one column that you want, then you use set precision fixed at the beginning. Now, that said, the next thing I need to do is essentially be able to write the file out. Now, how do I write the file out? Now, the same thing I can do is instead of using cout, I can use out file. And how would I do that? So what I've done is I've gone in and wherever it said cout, I change it to out file so that it doesn't output to screen. And then I just go run it and it creates my file, essentially velocity output with what I need, exactly what I need. So there you go. That's how you do your question. That's it. Few things to know. Few things to know. One, you need to make sure if when you are actually trying to format, you use set precision format. The next thing you need to know is the alignment. first get the C out working, and then once you get C out working, you can switch that with the object, which is your out file. In this case, it's the out file, and then it will create the file for you. Okay, you just have to go refresh, and then you will see the file on the left side. That said, I am going to stop.